Good morning. Good morning. Welcome to the Compensation Retirement Subcommittee. Some of us started at 7 a.m. this morning, so this feels like midday to me right now, but it's still early, and it's good to have you with us. We have a relatively short docket today, but important bills that we want to hear, and we'll jump right into it. I'm just going to go in order here and have Delegate Kent join us. Thank you.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the opportunity to present to you House Bill 1592. And this bill would provide our conservation police officers who are serving with the benefits of hazard pay. That is certainly our goal and intent. And I kind of just wanted to start off with a very quick, brief true story that happened a month ago, and it happened on the Rappahannock River. We had a gentleman who was going through some issues who jumped off of our bridge area, ran about a mile into a marsh there along the banks of Richmond County, and no one could get him. So what did they do? They called our conservation police officers, and the only ones that could go in there and trudge through the marsh along the very icy cold banks of the Rappahannock and help that gentleman was our conservation officers. So I know all of us here on this committee understand and everyone in this building understands the importance of conservation police officers, what they go through every day, the steps that they have to take in terms of hazard duty and all that is entailed. And a lot of times other law enforcement agencies relying on them to take those steps. So we hope that we could find a pathway forward so that conservation police officers could get the supplements that our other law enforcement officers also get, especially in times when those folks are hard to retain in their field. Certainly happy to answer any questions.
Great. Delegate, thank you for sharing that story as well. I'm going to start with members of the committee to see if we have any questions. Oh, and forget to take roll. Don't forget roll. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I appreciate the explanation and the background on that. I guess my understanding with respect to SPORs, so that's just state police officers, and then in terms of valors, you have a number of other law enforcement officers. So I guess looking at kind of the list of the different officers in law enforcement, if you can maybe tell us why you think that these should be in a different category than correctional officers, VMRC police officers, ABC special agents. So also people, any law enforcement is going to be in hazardous situations. But I guess my concern is if we do this for wildlife resource officers, any single one of those other categories, you could probably make the same case in terms of putting them into SPORs.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the question. I think that's what we wrestled with a lot, and I'm certainly open to amending this and looking at this because in studying this and having conversations, it almost seems like there needs to be a Valor's 2.0, if you will, just to use that term, because remaining in valors, the problem is it gets lumped in without the hazard duty pay, and it's lumped in more of where localities, law enforcement agencies with localities can assist those officers. And there's really not a middle ground. So we only put it into SPORs so they understand also that they would reduce their multiplier, but they want the hazard duty pay. And Virginia doesn't really have another element for them to be in. And to explore that, we're certainly open to it. Even for all of those law enforcement officers who do such great work that are state agency law enforcement officers and not localities. So, yes, sir. Hopefully that answers the question.
Thank you. Duncan, I apologize. I got so carried away, I did not take the roll.
Yes, sir.
So we're going to take a slight commercial interruption so the clerk can call the roll for us. I think we have a quorum. I just want to confirm that. Okay. I think we were good. Delegate, I apologize. Thank you. We'll come back to your
Yes,
bill
sir.
now. If there are no other questions for committee, do you have anyone speaking in favor or against the bill? In the public? Don't think we have anyone. Okay. Oh, we do have Delegate Wyatt.
If that is closed for, I just want to make a comment on the bill.
No, go right
Mr.
ahead. Yeah, I
Chairman.
think we're good. Go right ahead.
And I do feel, and I'm carrying an amendment and have discussed with my locality on law enforcement officers. I do feel that certain groups should be put in different separate categories because of the line of duty that on what they actually perform. I think a law enforcement officer that's on the streets should be classified very different than a correctional officer that is works inside in a controlled environment in a prison. So in running into many conservation officers over the years, most of the time is after dark. They're by themselves. They're on the water by themselves. Usually the time frame would be December, January time frame when it's very hazardous. So they don't have backup. They are there by themselves in a john boat or in chest waders in a marsh or in a river running. So it's very different than a law enforcement officer. I'm not saying that a law enforcement officer that works narcotics as an investigator doesn't put himself in harm's way. Probably, yes, at a greater rate than somebody that works the highways or the roads. The chances of something happening. So I guess my comment would only be that we should look at the specific task that these officers perform very differently as opposed to how we lump them together. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. If there are no other questions or comments, I'll bring it back to Delegate Kent one more time. Any closing remarks?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just speaking to that, I know the VRS does lay out kind of the way to look at hazard duty, and certainly conservation and police officers rank very high in terms of the hazard that they are approached with and have to deal with on a day-to-day basis relatively to all. But I certainly would appreciate just even a pathway forward as we look at valors and spores and figure out a way to help our statewide law enforcement agencies, officers who have so much to deal with every day.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes,
I do want to just inform the subcommittee. Were several budget amendments requested related to creating a work group to look at this issue for campus police. So basically, campus police are requesting the same. They would like the hazardous duty supplement, as would most people. So there have been 2 budget amendments requested to do a work group to sort of look at that for them. Obviously, that could be expanded to look at that for other people, other groups.
so that might be an avenue to look at, Delegate Kent, so we'll come back to that. And we have
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Delegate Bolova.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A quick comment, and then I have a motion.
Yes.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I again, really appreciate the delegate bringing this particular issue. Seems to me like there's a larger policy question at hand and a number of different budget amendments that will be considered. And so, Mr. Chairman, I have a motion. I would motion that we gently lay this bill on the table.
I have a motion to gently lay this bill on the table. Do we have a second? Second. All right, we'll go on the board. Just hold on one second. We've still got attendance up there. We're going to switch to voting.
Right. The attendance has been tabled.
The attendance has been tabled. Never done that before. We can. There we go. And the motion to lay on the table, gently lay on the table, carries a vote of 4-3. And Delegate Kent, just additional discussion, I would definitely follow with the patrons of those budget amendment. You said it's more than one, right, Gabe?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely, I will. Thank you so
Do
much.
that. Thank you so much.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Great. Okay, we're going to pivot now to Delegate Campbell's bill, 1812.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. 1812 would allow our animal control officers to receive enhanced retirement benefits for hazardous duty. Much like firefighters, police officers, and EMT, our animal control officers often are put into very dangerous situations when they're performing their duties. According to the 2023 JLARC study, animal control officers face a moderate level of public safety responsibility and a moderate level of demand. It's important to note that these officers actually have one of the highest rates of workmen's compensation claims among public safety applications, which tells us that their job is very dangerous. For our smaller localities, these officers really regularly perform their duties and assist our patrol officers on major calls and emergencies that do put them in harm's way. Again, this does not require localities to include them in these benefits, but it would allow them, so it's permissive. I think that we all agree that all of our localities are different in size. You know, some of us have more law enforcement officers available, regularly to respond to crimes. This would just, again, give them the opportunity to be able to participate in these benefits.
Campbell, thank you very much. We'll go to members of the subcommittee, and we have Delegate Reed.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. And Delegate Campbell, I'm just curious whether or not, considering the earlier conversation and discussion that we had, whether or not this is another one of those employment categories that should be rolled into that study that we're looking at where there's been several different budget amendments.
I am certainly agreeable to that.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Delegate Boulevard.
And I think this might be for Mr. J. And again, kind of looking at animal control officers versus some of the other categories where you talked about enhanced benefits. And so I'm thinking about E911 operators. But can you give us a sense of kind of where they ranked in terms of the JLARC report? And again, I think my concern is looking at this in a piecemeal fashion instead of looking at it from a more comprehensive fashion based on the JLARC report.
I mean, if you look at the JLARC report, well, first of all, animal control officers do have a higher rate of workers' compensation claims, fairly high, but it's also, most of them are very inexpensive, meaning they're not major incidences. There were certainly other groups in the JLARC study who would have been rated higher for being added into LEOs or Valors or SPORs than this occupation group. Also, in addition, when you compare us to other states, as of last year, there were only 11 states who included these positions in LEOs or in hazardous duty. The other issue is that, quite frankly, this is a local option, but most of the localities could, if they wanted to get these people covered, all you have to do is hire them as a deputy sheriff. A lot of these people, some of them already are covered. If they are classified as a deputy sheriff doing this work, they are covered. That is up to the locality. So there are ways for localities to do things if they so want to do it.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from the committee? Do we have anyone in the audience to speak in favor or against the bill? Not seeing anyone there. Come back to the committee one more time. Actually, come back to Delegate Campbell. Any final words on the?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I would just, say that right now we have about 490 of these officers across the Commonwealth. Again, they are performing their duties the same way that all of our other law enforcement officers are performing, and we rely on them. I know we all agree on their importance.
Great. No, thank you so much. Delegate Bolova.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. With the conversation in mind, I would move that we gently lay this bill on the table. Second.
We have a motion and a second to gently lay this bill on the table, and we'll go on the board. By a vote of 4 to 3, we are gently laying this bill on the table. Again, Delegate Campbell, thank you, and I think you've got some follow-up conversations there.
Thank you so much, Chairman and committee.
Thank you. Finally, last but not least, we have Delegate Garrett with HB 207027.
It is possible to be both last and least. I'm very grateful to the members of the subcommittee, and I'm excited to present this bill, even though I've been around long enough to know the probable outcome, and here's the reason. What we know, what everybody on that dais knows, regardless of party affiliation, et cetera, is that one size does not fit all as it comes to education. That we have historically sort of tried to steer kids towards a 4-year degree in a liberal arts field, and that's great for the kids it's great for, but it's not great for all the kids. The other thing that we know is that CTE often leads to better outcomes for some of our kids, but as I go around my district and meet with all of my school boards every year and boards of supervisors, I've heard this uniform problem, and that is we have a difficult time attracting qualified professionals to come and teach in these CTE fields, and they talk about the hoops that they have to jump through, et cetera. So I was meeting in Goochland County with the school board and the superintendent, and like a moment of lightning from the sky, I said, why is it that we treat lawyers different than nurses and carpenters and plumbers? And they said, what are you talking? By the way, there's a line amendment that we need to move, but we'll get to that in a second. Why do we treat lawyers different than nurses and carpenters and HVAC techs? And everybody looked at me funny, and I said, well, if we're trying to attract more people to this field, it occurs to me, and I'm going to steal a little bit of thunder from Jenny Slade, who sits next to me, that maybe if you've been nailing in chair rail for 40 or 30 years, you might like to go to a classroom, right? A good plumber probably makes more than a lot of teachers, but they don't have a retirement plan. Now, as everyone on the subcommittee knows, in order to attract lawyers to be judges, we allow them to vest an accelerated rate into the VRS system. And so what this bill would do is allow qualified professionals in certain skilled trades, nurses, HVAC techs, plumbers, carpenters, to vest more quickly into our VRS if they're willing to teach in our public schools. This addresses the need to get more qualified CTE professionals in by sweetening the pot rather than lowering the bar, right? Because one of the complaints we hear is, well, it's too many hoops to jump through. I maintain that if you sweeten the pot enough, people will be willing to jump through these hoops. So I would at this time ask if the staff might distribute the line amendment and request a favorable motion as to that line amendment.
Thank you, Delegate Garrett. We're getting that line amendment right now.
Now, Mr. Chair, if I might continue briefly.
Please.
So again, what it would do is allow professionals who had at least 20 years licensed practice in a qualifying trade, nursing, HVAC, plumbing, et cetera, electrician. All of these are trades that the state licenses, to join our school faculties as CTE staff members, invest in VRS at an accelerated rate. In other words, 10 years of service would beget the credit for 20, thus incentivizing these qualified professionals who our schools are having trouble attracting to come into the classroom without, again, lowering the bar, which is the other option that the superintendent discussed, to reduce their qualifications. And I understand the nature of this business and this body, but this is a real problem. Everybody knows this is a real problem. So what we're trying to do is think outside the box. And even if this bill isn't successful, start the conversation with you incredibly qualified members of this body so that it might be another avenue that we explore moving forward.
Garrett, thank you so much for that. Just to capture where we are right now, we have a printed copy of a line amendment in front of us, but I understand there's another line amendment. We want to make sure we get that from staff.
Yes, Mr. Chair, members of the subcommittee, there's a slight change in the line amendment ahead of you or in front of you.
Okay.
What that will read instead is at line 19, introduced after who, you're going to continue to strike the remainder of line 19 through service on line 20, and then you will insert has held the required professional license in the specific career and technical education subject area in which the individual seeks to teach for 20 years or more but less than 30 years. That second amendment will read line 21, introduced after who. Again, you will continue to strike the remainder of line 21 and through service on line 22, and then you will insert has held the required professional license in the specific career and technical education subject area in which the individual seeks to teach for 30 years or more.
Okay, I think we've got that, so if someone can move the.
Move the amendment.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. No opposed, great. I'm going to pause for a second. I think we have a question from Delegate Reed.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, and Delegate Garrett, thanks so much for doing this, and I really do appreciate the idea of kind of thinking outside the box. I'm just curious, though, I have a couple questions, Mr. Chair, so they're kind of just a train of thought,
right.
where I know that we do this conceptually with judges, but I also know from our own experience in the 20th Circuit Court that it doesn't necessarily have the desired effect of attracting top attorneys to then become judges. So I'm just curious why you think that this would work differently for this particular employment category than it does for judges. And then and if you can just hold on to that. And then the second thing is because this appears to have potentially a fairly significant fiscal impact, have you thought about or considered the idea of maybe doing a pilot program in a particular area where we would then be able to minimize the fiscal impact and study the results? Because it seems to me like that there are so many variables outside of our control that would actually lead to recruiting people to do this beyond just improving their retirement benefits. So I'm sorry that's a lot, but hopefully you're able to digest that, and if you can provide some responses, that would be
I'm
very
not even a highly qualified attorney, and I followed. So I can't speak specifically to the 20th Circuit. I do believe that our system for attracting judges to the bench has been largely, and this is opinion, largely successful across the state, but certainly in some circuits you're going to have different outcomes than others for sure. But I do think there's a parallel in that a successful electrician probably makes more money than a lot of teachers, but they don't have a retirement and benefit plan that the teachers have. Now, I've spoken to at least 4 or 5 superintendents, every one of whom loves this, right? Now, I know I can be wrong. I hope this isn't being filmed. And so maybe they're wrong, but what we're trying to do is, this is a universally acknowledged problem. I look at you and nod and get some nods back in return. So we're trying to think outside the box to your second question, and that is a study in a smaller footprint. I'm wide open to it. I'm wide open to a pilot program. I'm wide open to a study bill. I just think that this is a real problem where I live, and I bet you it's a real problem where you live. And so, success has 1,000 fathers and failure is an orphan. We just want to find a way to do it differently. And again, there's a good faith effort here to do it without lowering the bar by which we let people into our schools to be around our children, right? So, I don't know the 20th Circuit specifically, and if it's got, depending upon demographics and income scale across the state, you're going to have different outcomes. But I am 100%. I've spoken to people in the CTE fields too, not as many, but these guys and gals would love the opportunity to do something different for the last 10 years of their career, and would love the opportunity to impact the future of the Commonwealth by teaching our kids. But we just haven't created the structure yet to make it attractive for them. So, but I am absolutely, positively wide open to a study, to a pilot program, anything. Again, even if we just plant the seed with you, other members of the General Assembly, that maybe we can accelerate VRS to get more people interested in teaching the CTE fields. That's a win for us and our kids and our future.
Thank you, Delegate Garrett. Just to get maybe a little bit of input, and I hate to put them on the spot, but we do have folks from VRS here, and if they feel like they could weigh in on the amended version of this, and again, if you're not comfortable doing that, I'm not going to put you on the spot, but thought at least would ask since we have them in the room.
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, this sort of flying a little bit without a safety net, but it could potentially lower the cost somewhat, but really without looking at it, we'd certainly be happy to take the amended version and do additional fiscal impact statement for it that would be a little bit more comprehensive and accurate versus sort of coming up from the hip. But I think it could potentially lessen, potentially.
Yeah, we just looking forward to next week because we are going to run out of time on our meetings. But I think we could kick this to next week and still have time to get it in with the other bills. If the subcommittee's comfortable with that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I guess, Mr. Chairman.
Doug Bola.
If I could, I think you're getting at an important issue. I guess my concern is twofold, right? So it's the precedent, because I think you could make the same case for a lot of other things. And so again, we have a potentially larger policy. I guess the second part is the efficacy of what you're doing. And so, the idea of a pilot might be a good idea. I don't know that you need a bill to do a pilot. I think that comes down to whether or not you've got a budget amendment that would allow us to do something temporary in order to find out whether whether you get a good bang for your buck for it. And so I guess my question is whether or not you have a budget amendment, given that this is, I think, 14 million or thereabouts.
Metaphorically, if you smack a dog with newspaper enough, it stops peeing on the carpet. I don't have a budget amendment, and I should. But I'm super grateful for the input. I think Delegate Bolivar, your Christmas tree / camel's nose argument is legitimate, but I don't see where we have that parallel, at least in the education world. But it's a good argument because it's always true, right? Vismesdep, great example. So,
Delegate Wyatt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I go back to my Board of Supervisor days when this company called Amazon was first coming to the Commonwealth, and Ardeen Williams came to tour the state fair with the former governor and wanted to meet with some members of surrounding counties. And she was talking about trades, and Ardeen Williams was her name, and she wanted to talk about trades and technologies, expanding those in HVAC, electrical, auto mechanics, that I was kind of questioning and wondering why somebody from Amazon would really promote this. And look where we're at, more than 7, almost 8 years later, that there is definitely a need for those. We see J. Sargent Reynolds just reported an enrollment of 12% increase. We know higher ed applications are going down at a 4-year university, but folks that go to electrical, HVAC, and then they're their own business owners within 6 years. So they're the small businesses of our future. And I would rather, if my child or grandchild was going to a class at a trade and technology, I'd rather somebody that did the trade and had experience in many years, as opposed to somebody that has a degree to hang on the wall and has no in the field experience. So yeah, we've got and I'm fortunate enough to represent a county that has large companies that donate chillers from the HVAC side, and then also another county that has a regional trades and technology that can only provide auto mechanics. So it's a desperate disparity around the state with our regional trade and technology academies, where multiple counties have to come and there are very few occupations or trades offered. And we've got to do a better job in more rural Virginia to attract those regional teachers to teach at those regional academies to really prepare those young people for jobs of the future. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Delegate Reed.
Yes, Mr. Chair. If it's appropriate, I'd like to make one additional comment, and then I'd like to make a motion, if that's okay.
That'd be great. Let me squeeze in Delegate Hodges. You have a comment?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I greatly appreciate the time and just speaking to the bill very quickly. Yes. And I'd just like to echo what Delegate Wyatt said. When I look at my district, with 76% of the workforce driving out of the district each and every day, and the 6 counties that I represent, and 2, and then the town school as well on top of that, The CTE programs, I mean, we definitely need to beef up, and we need to do something different. Because when I look at the folks driving out of the district, it leaves the workforce behind between 9 to 5, where we have the lowest wages in the state, lower than Southwest. And I look at the electricians, the plumbers, and the vans and folks that we see, they're the ones that are coming in and working in my district. We need to give those kids an opportunity at home to be able to stay, to live, and to work there. I grew up next to my grandparents. And, you know, we don't have the opportunities for our kids to be able to stay. Everyone worked in the paper mill, and now the paper mill is actually scrambling to have qualified workers. And what are we doing? We're bringing those workers in from somewhere else because we're not able to train our kids to be able to stay and live in the district, and it's breaking up families. And that concerns me. And I do believe that we do need to take another look at this, and, you know, and greatly appreciate your recommendation, Mr. Chairman, to be able to possibly look at it next week.
Thank you. And we have Delegate Reed.
Yes, Mr. Chairman and Delegate Garrett, I think a lot of folks have already said a lot of the things that I was thinking about as well, but this is an issue that is not just being affected in rural areas, because before I came down to session, I met with a constituent small business owner who was also talking about the need to do better training in trades, and many private industries are actually doing their own programs. To that point, I actually reached out to Anthony Reedy, who is the new executive director for Virginia Works, with some ideas that came from the small businesses in my district. And I got a response back from him this morning, so it's really very timely, and he's looking into that. All of that being said, and especially added on what Delegate Bulova was saying, where it's like this could potentially have unforeseen, unintended consequences from a budgetary standpoint of view, I am willing to work with you and share the information that I'm getting from Executive Director Reedy, but I'm going to make a motion that we gently lay this on the table for right now, and we continue to work on this.
We have a motion to gently lay this on the table and continue the discussion. And it's been seconded, and we'll go on the board.
And
I'm sorry.
And Mr. Chairman and Delegate Garrett, I really do mean that genuinely. Let's please connect, because it's like, I think that there, according to my small business folks, there may be existing unused funds in the general fund budget that we could look at for something like this.
Mr. Chairman, Delegate Reed, briefly, thank you. I don't usually say that when my bills get laid on the table, but I will say this. If anybody on this committee wants to take this idea and run with it for next year, maybe somebody who's not on my right but on my left, I will not have my feelings hurt at all. I do think this is something that we could work on in a bipartisan manner to help our kids. And if it started today by failing, but it succeeds a couple of years from now, I'm going to be happy. And Virginia will be better for it. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you. I just want to reflect that the motion did carry 4-3, but there's obviously a lot of interest in this. I can speak from Henrico as well. And I think we will definitely be continuing this conversation. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you all.
Okay. And with that, there's no other business before us. We will have a busy agenda next week, but for today, we are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.